types of support that is out there for you guys to use to give you a really good overview of how schools are going to come back to school swimming if they haven't already done so in your areas, and also to start thinking about what you could do if you are starting to bring them back. So my name's Katie Towner. I'm the head of Learn to Swim for Swim England, and I have got current colleagues on the call and previous colleagues on the call, which is amazing. So I just wanted to take the time to introduce the team that are currently working at the moment. So I've got Alex Barrett and Lauren Paget, and then Dave Rayner. How long have you been off now? First day back for how long?
Well, I've been off for 5 months and I've been back at work for about 4.5 hours.
So all questions we're going to direct at Dave because he can clearly answer everything now. So any problems will go to Mr. Rayner.
Yeah, just come straight to me. I'm more than happy to take it all on. So hello everyone.
And we feel a little bit under pressure today because we've got Mandy Mason and Sue Barlow joining us just to say hi, and Carolyn Dorr. So there's quite a few tutors. Dave, you're on here. I've seen some other familiar faces. So it's been great to see. Actually, now we're coming out the other side of this and pools are opening, we're still getting the engagement levels and you guys are spending the time with us. So thank you. And we'll just move over to the do's and don'ts of the webinar today. So the presentation will be recorded and edited and then shared at a later date, so you will have access to it. If you can keep your microphones muted throughout to avoid any feedback, but there will be opportunities to bring yourselves off of mute if you want to ask any questions, and if, like me, you can't type quick enough in the chat bar, but you can use that chat function as well. So you don't need to have your cameras on, but it is nice to see all of your faces, so up to you guys, we'll leave that with you. Next slide for me, Alex. So the agenda today, we're looking at the overview of the returning to pools guidance specifically for school swimming. So we've written obviously the guidance for returning to pools for users, operators, swimming lessons, as well as clubs in there as well, and our aquatic disciplines. And this one was in addition when we worked with the DFE and AFP to create school swimming guidance specifically for you guys to use. We're going to have a look at the School Swimming and Water Safety Charter as well, so some resources that you can use. The National Curriculum Training Programme, or NCTP, so where you can upskill, if you are a school, you can upskill school teachers, as well as we have a CPD and an iLearn available, so we're going to look at the learning opportunities. We've also got a best practice example. Unfortunately, the operator that was going to come and speak to talk about how they successfully got schools back into their pool can't make it today, but Alex Barrett is going to present that on their behalf. Then we're going to look at some supporting resources, and then we'll open the floor up to any questions. So hopefully this is what you thought was going to happen today, and hopefully that you enjoy. So I'm going to hand over now to my team, which is Dave, no, I'm joking, Alex Barrett and Lauren Paget.
Thank you, Katie. So Dave, no, we're not going to go straight over. But yeah, as Katie said, we're going to start with the returning to pool guidance. Now, you'll probably be familiar with what's already been created, and you've probably tapped into that, and I've recognised a lot of faces from previous webinars as well. But so far, our guidance to help pools and the sector return to the pool has been supporting operators, users, swimming lessons, community swimming, and also club activity. But we've now gone one step further and included school swimming on that, which is absolutely key. And that launched the end of July, just before schools came back, and it's really key to make sure that those schools and operators were ready to get back in school swimming. Now, you've seen in the guidance, if you're familiar, that each section has detailed practical examples of how the guidance can be implemented, and then also comes along with additional considerations for your operations and how to potentially implement those considerations, and also links and supporting resources in order for you to effectively deliver. One of those things is this webinar, so thank you for joining us, but there's also lots of resources that we'll tell you about throughout this webinar as well. So I suppose the big thing is, how did we create it, and how have we got to this point? And we took the same approach that we did with the returning to pool guidance for operators and clubs, and that was to include key and influential people from within the sector to ensure that the guidance was as robust and accurate as possible. So they include industry partners, leisure operators, local councils, and lots of people that are involved in the initial guidance. However, again, we went one step further, and as Katie mentioned at the start, we include the Department for Education and AFP, again, to make sure that there's that school swimming influence involved in there. So there's a couple of people on the call that are involved in that. So thank you for joining us today, and thank you for your support creating the guidance. And it's had a really positive impact on where we are at now. Now, what we know is that school swimming is hugely important, and we know that children across the country miss out on school swimming pre-COVID, and sometimes it's their only opportunity to come to the pool and learn to swim. And that's never been more important than post-COVID. So it's really important that those children that have missed out, we support them to get them back in the water, and that children don't now miss out when they could be swimming. So the best practice example we're going to share with you today will do exactly that. It will show you how somebody has returned safely and is getting children swimming. So we're looking forward to sharing a bit more information about that with you as well. Now, one thing that's really important to know is that this guidance is aimed at both schools and leisure operators. Now, that's important because some of the language in there will be related to primary schools. So if you're a swimming teacher and you're not familiar with some of the information, then that's because it might be aimed towards a school. But likewise, if you're a head teacher or a PE lead and there's something that's related to operator guidance, that's because we're supporting the leisure facilities as well. So it's really important that we work with both of those sides of the coin to ensure that school swimming returns safely. Okay, so we kind of wanted to pause and talk about the Department of Education and why that was fundamental to development of this guidance. So one of the things we asked initially to the Department of Education was, where do we sit within the guidance? How does swimming factor into schools returning to a school setting? If you go onto the government's website, you'll see that there is guidance around transport, there's guidance around residential trips, there's guidance around after-school activities. And the question we asked was, how does school swimming fit into that? And the clear answer that we got back is that we're a national curriculum subject, and therefore we fit into the same guidance that schools are using to get their children back in the classrooms. So that's really important for school swimming and good news. It says it in the guidance, and this is not word for word, but it says something to the effect of that schools need to return in a COVID secure environment while providing a robust national curriculum subjects. So we're one of those subjects. So we think that's a really exciting news, that where it's safe to do so, school swimming should continue. So that's what we're working really hard to support you guys on this call so that you can deliver those lessons effectively. So a couple more bits of information on there. Because it's because it's been supported by the Department of Education, it will also be hosted on their website and shared with schools because it's a national curriculum. So that's a really kind of key piece of information, that both schools and leisure operators will be seeing the same document and the same guidance. So again, we think this is a really exciting opportunity to make school swimming at the top of the agenda. Okay, so what are some of the key pieces of guidance that are in place and that we think are key in order to get schools back in the water? Now, there are lots more in the guidance, and what we wanted to do today is pull out some of the highlights that are there for you and that we think might lead to some questions, and hopefully we can support you a little bit further on. So first one is primary school social distancing policies should be replicated within the swimming pool facility. So if when your school that you're delivering to has a certain bubble in place, so it'd be 15 students, 30 students or more, if they're bubbling within a year group, if they're taking other mitigating factors such as washing their hands before they come in a classroom, not coming to school if you've got symptoms, all those kind of factors, then that can be replicated within the swimming pool. So the swimming pool is essentially an extension of their classroom. So that's really important. So that might mean that compared to your commercial lessons or your learn to swim lessons on an evening, for example, that you could have potentially bigger numbers, because if that class is in a bubble of 20, for example, then they don't need to have the same measures that individual 20 students would have. They can come as a bubble as they do at school and swim within a bubble. So that's really important for you in that water. So it might mean some of those social distancing steps you have in don't need to be in place for those children within the water. Now, importantly, that leads us on to our second point, that mitigating factors should be in place to reduce the risk of transmission. So those things that you guys have worked really hard on, whether you're a swimming teacher or a leisure operator or a manager or a swim school owner, those factors that have been put in place to reduce the risk of transmission. So increased hygiene regimes, standing in single file or 2 meters outside of the building, being escorted through the building by a member of staff are still really important, because you've got other users within your facility and also your staff members need to socially distance. So yes, there's fantastic news that the bubbles can happen within the swimming lesson environment, and that means the social distancing measures for children will be different, but your members of staff and your precautions should definitely still be in place, and that will protect your staff, your other users, and make sure that you kind of have that smooth transition back into the water. So that's something really important to kind of get those two right. So moving forward, that leads us to our kind of third point we wanted to kind of discuss today, is that it's key to allocate a designated officer for the management of swimming lessons, specifically for school swimming, because it's important that as the operator, you know exactly what the school are doing. So they're in a group of 20, they're not socially distancing maybe at the school because they've not got space, but they are doing these 10 measures. So it's important you know them. But likewise, if you're a school teacher and you're coordinating with the leisure facility, it's important you know if the leisure facility has a different entry point or a different exit, or if you're using a different changing room than you were pre-COVID. So it's really important you check in and those communications are clear so that school swimming can happen as quickly as possible. So the fourth one, again, we think this is a really important point, is that adaptations should be made to meet the needs of the learners. Now, this section is expanded upon greatly within the guidance. But essentially what we're saying here is that if a learner has special educational needs and or a disability and require physical support or emotional support that requires somebody to be in less than 2 meters distance or requires someone to be in the water with them, then as long as they are within that bubble that it happens within the school, then that can continue. So if they have a carer within the primary school setting, you know, and they need support, whether it be getting in the water or whatever that might be, then that can continue. Again, we're thinking of the school, the swimming pool being an extension of the classroom. Again, it's important to note that that's not your staff, excuse me, because your staff still need to socially distance. But if they've got a carer or a parent that is supporting them at school, then that can continue to happen at the pool. So we think that's really good news, and again shows how our sport is inclusive and can get those people back into the water as soon as possible. So that's quite an important point for those learners that need it. And then finally, we know that this is key, and if you're joining us on this call, we know you take school swimming seriously. But what we want to do is just emphasize that as a national governing body, we recommend there's an increased emphasis on water safety. If children have not been swimming for a significant amount of time and it's their only opportunity to get in the water, maybe it's been reduced, maybe they don't swim as long because of all the restrictions that might be in place, then it's key that water safety is at the heart of your delivery. So are they safe in and around the pool? Do they understand pool rules? What about their local geography? Do they understand what to do if one of their friends needs some help and who they might need to call? Do they know the water safety messages? So it's really key that you consider some of those things. And we're going to talk about the school swimming and water safety charter in a minute that does a fantastic job of bringing those together. But yeah, we think there's a real kind of emphasis that needs to be put on water safety, especially for those first lessons back. Okay, so moving through the guidance, we're going to pause in a minute and then see if there's any questions in the chat box, and then we'll keep going. But one of the other sections that we've got in there is around the PE and sports premium, and we think this is really key. So the existing guidelines for the PE and sports premium continue to apply. So what was happening last year for schools and what they can use this government funding for can continue to be used this year. Now that's due to be reviewed in the future, but at the minute, they can use it exactly how they see fit. And they offer two things. So they can use this funding that each school will get to develop or add to the PE, physical activity and sport that the school provides, or they can build the capacity within the school to ensure that improvements made will benefit pupils joining the school in future years. So given that schools potentially have some funding they didn't use last year, and they've got some more this year, we feel that school swimming is an absolutely fantastic opportunity to use that. Now, there's lots of kind of sports and activities within the national curriculum, things like dance, teamwork, outdoor sports, but swimming is the only specific sport that's named for the national curriculum. So we think it's key to utilise some of this funding now for school swimming. So that's why we're kind of shouting about this and we've included it in the guidance. So three of the ways, and we're going to go through these in a moment and I'll hand over to Lauren, that we think that can be used and we're going to talk you through today, is the National Curriculum Training Programme. So we'll tell you more about that and the importance of that in a COVID environment. Schools signing up to the School Swimming and Water Safety Charter and supporting them along that question. And then finally, the top-up lessons as well. So what can we do for those learners that have missed swimming because of COVID to get them back up to those national curriculum standards? Okay, guys, I'm going to pause there before we start going into some other topics, just see if there's any questions, if anyone wants to come off mute, or if there's anything from that initial information about the headline guidance on the returning to pool guidance. Lauren and Katie, have we had any questions so far?
Nothing so far, but we'll just...
I can't type as quick as I can, quickly anyway, so let's just give them a sec to put anything in. But Alex, I was just going to ask just one thing, if you could explain, I don't know whether you're going to come on to it later, just around what that means for the changing rooms. I noticed we've got a number of swimming teachers on here, so I think we've said about being in the pool, but that changing room area and how we get the kids through the facility. Yeah,
great question. I imagine that's probably on a lot of people's minds. So yes, we're going to come on to that as a best practice example in a moment, and also some kind of FAQs that have had a lot in our inboxes. But very briefly, that if a school is not socially distancing, you've probably seen it on the news. Every morning there's a news report in a different school and the students are there. You'll note that they might not be socially distancing. It might not be practicable for them. So they might be wearing masks or they might be doing something else. And if that's the case, then the school don't need to social distance within the leisure centre either, between each other. So they might be able to use the changing rooms as they did pre-COVID. So that's really important to get those learners through the water. And we've got an example from one of our partners in the northwest of England that are doing that to great effect. The only thing to consider, and again, we'll talk about this more, is that if you've got two schools that are different bubbles, then you need to have that cleaning regime in between those two classes coming in. But we've got an example of what that could look like for you coming up. Katie, does that help a little bit?
Yeah, I was just thinking if people are typing, that's probably one that they're come up with. We've just got two more in there. Are the National Curriculum Training courses still running? And the answer is yes. The majority of it is being run through the Institute of Swimming at the moment because they have an online option. And then so everybody's finishing their online theory, and then the practical assessment centres will come out and do it at a later date when the schools are back. Majority of schools have either come back or are thinking to come back kind of after October half term or some as late as January. So depending on your area would be depending on when that NCTP practical assessment could take place.
I see there's a question around, thank you for that, Helen, what will happen around transport? That's really going to be affected by your setting and how that works for you. So do you hire the company yourselves? Do you go out to tender? Do the schools do it independently? There is some guidance within our document, top tips for transport, and there's also a link that takes you to the government's website for schools transport and how that might be affected. We know that there are partners that are using transport very well. They've got cleaning regimes in, depending on the bus company, and they're swimming already. We also know some bus companies have asked to wait until October because they're managing the new schoolrooms and things. So it's really going to depend on your local providers, but there is a link within the guidance that we can send post-webinar for a little bit more information as well. Hopefully that helps, Helen.
Okay, Alex, we've had another question pop in from Joanna. So she's saying she's currently delivering to two schools at a leisure centre, and they have not kept their 1 metre distance from her. Is it her responsibility to ensure they keep to this? I would definitely go back to your line manager or the the person that you're working. So if it's the school that you're working directly with, I would definitely address it with the school, but also it is everybody's own responsibility to ensure that they are keeping that social distance from you as you are external to their bubble. But Joanna, I would definitely urge you to speak to the school and kind of reinforce that as you are external to the bubble, you need to have that distance between those children and yourself. Hopefully that helps a little bit.
Yeah, it could be a case of because they're used to being at school and in a bubble and close to their teachers, they just haven't reinforced that instruction with their children. So just, maybe some signage or some other bits and pieces just so they remember, and think about the communication that both the school and the provider have. Is it clear about how they come and enter the facility and what happens when they're on poolside, or has it been very much down to you to depict that across to them? So just have a think about that and address it sooner rather than later.
We've just had another question from David. So, are the Department of Education expecting schools to report on 1920 Key Stage 2 outcomes on school websites? And it is in our guidance as well for you, David, so there's a little bit more information there. But essentially, what you can report or what you have available should be then submitted to them. Katie, is there anything additional you can add there?
No, that is the case, that that we are expecting to report on it, or the information that we do have, and especially around what the PE premium is being spent on as well. Again, obviously we can roll some of that over, so there is still the need to report.
Yeah, and I think one of the things in conversation we've been involved is that the outcomes that have been monitored, the absence of data is also really powerful data for as well, because then we know how many children have not potentially achieved those outcomes. So yes, there's an expectation to share, but also an understanding that you might not have completed data because everything stopped sometime in March.
And David's just added to this. Katie, this might be one for you.
I was just reading it thinking I'm going to have to ask the question.
I haven't come across it being used. So for any of those of you who can't see the chat box, David's asked if the PE and sports premium can be used to fund the transition from a paper system to a digital solutions for measuring, monitoring and reporting on Key Stage 2 outcomes. It's not something myself, Katie or Alex have come across before, and obviously that sits with the guidelines of the PE and sports premium. So it's definitely something we can look into. And
Question.
Yeah, David, if you want to, I'm sorry to interrupt, Lauren, if you want to drop here, I will put our email in the chat box to get in touch. We work with a number of schools, some in digital providers. Now the guidance for the PE and sports premium is to enhance this PE provision for future years. That's one of the key taglines. So, you know, very off the cuff, it sounds like that could work, but again, we'd have to dig into it. But if you're willing to kind of reach out, we'll happily support you and put you in contact with some people that can deliver that for you. Well, I'll drop our email into the chat box now. Lauren, I will hand over to you. Please keep coming with the questions. We'll go through the next section and then we'll pause again and we'll have some more time to let the questions build up a little bit. So Lauren, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Alex. I've just dropped our school swimming email address in the inbox now. Okay, so I am going to take you all through our school swimming and water safety charter today. We support schools and lesson providers in delivering programs that meet government criteria for swimming and water safety. It would be really good to see in the chat box, if everybody is willing, who currently uses our school swimming and water safety charter. Give me a 1 if you do, give me a 2 if you don't. Nice and easy. 1 for yes, 2 for no. Oh, a little bit 50-50. Helen saying not sure. Nikki's half and half. I like that. Nikki's like, yes, I half do, half don't. No, Nikki, I know exactly what you mean. Fab. Okay, so hopefully those of you who do currently use it, hopefully you can use today as an opportunity to ask more questions, make sure you're really utilizing all the resources that we have available to you. And those of you that don't, hopefully we will give you all the information that you do need to sign up and start utilizing our school swimming and water safety charter. Okay, Alex, next slide when you're ready. So another little question in the chat box for you. So I would like to know how many of you know the national curriculum outcomes. There are 3, and I just want you to number them 1, 2, and 3 and give me the details of what you think they are. If you only know 1 or 2, please fire away in the chat box now. I'll give you a little bit longer this time because it's a little bit more lengthy.
No pressure, Mandy and Sue, but I hope you can answer these.
Not sure I can remember, to be honest.
Forgotten already, man. It's been that long.
Well, yeah, the sun's out.
Fab. I'm seeing quite a few things coming through, and we really like doing this one when we talk about school swimming and the Water Safety Charter, because we typically actually think around the 25 meters. It is a minimum 25-meter swim, so we often kind of focus on this distance, but actually that's an absolute minimum. So this is always a really interesting one as well. Some really good attempts through the chat box, and positive that most of you have got at least one in there. So Alex, can we pop the next slide up? So we have got performed safe self-rescue in different water-based situations. Number 2 is probably the most popular, I would say, or historically the one that we focus on the most, but actually all 3 sit exactly the same importance. So swim competently, confidently, and proficiently over a distance of at least 25 meters. We always talk about this 25 meters, but actually it's a complete, it's a minimum distance. And we also have using a range of strokes effectively, for example, ensuring that your swimmers are using that front crawl, backstroke, and breaststroke. It's not just focusing on one stroke. Okay, so hopefully if you only knew one of those, you now feel really informed with what all 3 are. So what is the School Swimming and Water Safety Charter about, and where did it come from? So this is a partnership between the primary schools, the lesson providers, and us at Swim England. We all want to be recognised for taking swimming and water safety seriously. And as Alex mentioned, this is probably the most amount of time that children have ever been away from the water. So it's really imperative that we encourage and really hold that emphasis on the water safety element as well as the swimming development. This is designed to support school swimming by developing and improving teaching and assessments, working towards those 3 outcomes. And this is recommended for any school delivering curriculum swimming and water safety lessons. This is a structured teaching program that meets that government criteria that we just touched on. So it's embedded all the way through a pathway that is progressive through 6 awards and an additional 2, which I will take you through in a minute. There are plenty of resources for teachers and lesson providers on how to deliver inclusive, fun, and effective school swimming lessons. So we are looking at the School Swimming and Water Safety Charter, focusing on our Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 swimmers. We're looking at that typical age of 5 to 11 years, which is also our typical audience for our Learn to Swim framework as well. I can just see the chat box flagging up, but I'm going to come back to questions in a minute. So as I mentioned, this includes our 6 core awards, which is aligned to the Learn to Swim framework. As I just mentioned, that's our key audience for both frameworks here. Pupils are taught that safe self-rescue, effective stroke technique, and we're looking for them to be competent over 25 meters distance and more. We're looking for this to meet the national curriculum requirements and standards for all pupils by the time they finish in Key Stage 2. And we also have additional awards to help pupils exceed that national curriculum standard. So this is what our awards look like, and they are all in a digital format. So these are accessible to the school directly through their sign up link, which we will take you through in a minute as well. You can see in the middle, this is the design for the 6 core awards. I absolutely love these certificates. They're really easily accessible for the schools to download and award their swimmers. We then have the 2 additional awards as well. So we have the aquatic skills and the self-rescue award as well. So 8 awards in total. So if you've got those overachievers, there's a lot of opportunity for them to be rewarded and continue their swimming journey. So as I mentioned, this does go in line with our Learn to Swim framework. You can see that we're targeting the same age group here. So actually, how do those awards differ to our Learn to Swim? And they are different. We are working towards different outcomes, and we need to establish that. The awards 1 to 6, you can see listed on the left-hand side, roughly map across to our stage 1, 2, 3, and 4 there. So you can ensure that your swimmers and your school pupils are getting the right level of delivery when they come to both elements of their swimming. But it is really key to address that these are different frameworks for different reasons. So this is brand new this year, and they have not long launched. So we have our School Swimming Foundation Awards. These are also embedded in the charter for those pupils with SEND or any other needs where they actually might just need a bit of a slower introduction to the water. We want them to focus on just getting used to the pool water, that water confidence, but also having that element of water safety as well. These are great steps for them to build up to those core awards if that is something that they would find achievable. They're much smaller steps, and these are really personal achievements for those swimmers that may need that extra support. They provide a foundation for achieving the national curriculum requirements if pupils are able to. And there are 6 of these awards achievable. I can just see Stuart's just popped up saying, really like this new addition for pupils with SEND. Thank you, Stuart. The ladies behind that award creation, that new framework, are actually on today's call. But yeah, really good addition. So they are just included when you get your charter sign up link, and they're included as that download as well. Let's just have a look at some other questions before I move on.
So Lauren, I've got a few questions around how do you access the SEND Awards / the charter. So I know we're going to go through that in the resources, but is it worth just explaining what that looks like for an operator in a school?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have the school swimming and water safety charter. So there's an access for the operator, the leisure facility, so that they have that digital access, whereas the school also gets that digital access as well. So everybody's on the same page as such. Everybody can see the documents that are needed and that are ready to download. Now, the one thing the schools get in addition to the digital downloads are the physical resources as well. We will take you through these and we will show you what they look like. And the other thing that the school get to access are those downloadable certificates. They're downloaded and printed in school, so it's a lot easier and a lot more manageable, and at a much lower cost actually for the school. So that is all embedded from those foundation awards through to the core 6 awards, with those additional 2 awards as well. It is a yearly subscription, which will cost you £36 for the year, and you just renew. You get the initial physical resources on your first order, but we will take you through those a little bit more. I can just see a couple more questions coming in.
Yeah, one, Lauren, was around, can a school use the PE and Sports Premium to pay for their charter? Is that something they can do to enhance their PE products?
Absolutely, please do. Yes, 100%. Julie said, have they just been done for schools in terms of the foundation?
So the Foundation Awards actually launched just before lockdown, and unfortunately something else happened in the world that took the limelight away from our fantastic new awards. So they're actually relatively new. The charter itself can be accessed via the operator. So if you have 6, 7 pools and teach hundreds of schools, you can sign up to it as a whole and deliver to your schools. So again, we'll drop our email in the chat box. We'd love to work you on that. Or an individual school can use it, either their premium or just fund it themselves to sign up as an independent school. So they're the 2 main options. And if you're interested, Lauren will drop our email address in the chat box, and we'd love to work with you on that. So hopefully that answers that question a little bit. Okay, Lauren, shall we keep going? And any more questions, again, we'll let them build up and we'll pause again before the next section. So thank you for all the feedback, guys. It's good to hear.
Absolutely. Thanks, Alex. I've just dropped our email address in there again. So, Alex, when you're ready, we're just going to take you through what the hub actually looks like. So once you sign up to the charter, you then get this access here. You can see you've got video resources there. You've got a whole host of general resources, teaching resources. We've got a whole host of lesson plans, as you can see, being shown on the screen there as well, that are just downloadable and easy to use. You can see where you would download and print off the awards, and we have guidance documents all the way through to the charter stamp. So really dish out about how serious you are taking school swimming. And the very bottom one, the champion templates. So these are letters and pieces of information that can be sent out to parents, your pool provider, and for your pupils as well, to really take them through the use of the School Swimming and Water Safety Charter. Really, really good hub. So once you sign up, you get this access, and once you renew every year, that access continues. And we keep updating this hub as much as possible, and yeah, it's really handy to have. And make sure that if you are already signed up to the charter, make sure you are accessing everything on here. If you feel that you're not, or you haven't got the latest kind of access to the hub, please drop us a message and we're more than happy to jump on a call and make sure you're accessing everything correctly. So in terms of the charter sign up and what schools get, I mentioned that they get a physical element of our resources. So this is exclusive to the schools. The operators don't get this part. But this is included when you sign up for that initial year. So you get the award certificates, pin badges, encouragement stickers, and progress cards for all learners. You get your syllabus guidance cards, lesson plan tips and templates for teachers, and you get the access to the online portal where everything is stored and downloaded and updated as frequently as we can. You will also get email updates from Swim England each term. So there's a whole host of resources there for you if you are a school. So you would have seen Alex just hover over the school swimming assessment videos that are accessible on the hub as well. These are for school swimming teachers and lesson providers. This is to improve the understanding of the national curriculum requirements for school swimming and water safety. And there's 43 films to support teaching, learning and skills development. And this is aligned to the Swim England School Swimming Core Awards and the 2 additional awards. So our charter pack for lesson providers and operators is just a little bit different. Now for them, it is free of charge to ensure that they are on the same page and they are taking school swimming just as seriously as every primary school out there. So they would have access to an Ask the Expert webinar. These happen 3 times per year. They'd also get that access to that online portal where they can view the same resources as the school. However, they won't get access to those certificate downloads. They are exclusive for the school to download, print and keep in-house. They will also get regular Swim England contact via email. And as I mentioned before, this is free of charge. So if you're a school and you're signing up to our charter, make sure you're having those conversations with your lesson providers or your local operator to ensure they know what you expect of them when you are attending school swimming. And if you're a lesson provider or an operator, please contact us as well if you want support speaking to your schools that are coming in and have a look at seeing if they are signing up to the charter, and it becomes a merge of agreement of delivering the charter. So we run, we have campaigns that we run and support throughout the academic year. You can see a couple of probably familiar logos in front of you now, and you can see the link, which I will pop in the chat box as well for you. But a couple of the more popular ones would be Drowning Prevention Week. This is really key for you to deliver alongside the School Swimming and Water Safety Charter. We've got the Big School Swim. We've got Swim Safe that also runs. We have the Aqua Splash Festival, that is one of my favourites. And we also have the School Swimathon. So there's lots of other things, lots of other campaigns that actually you can have those schools involved in throughout your academic year for swimming delivery. Okay, so we are going to pause there just for a second. I can just see the chat box flagging up a little bit.
So one of the questions we've got, Lauren, is around the certificates that you mentioned for the schools. Are the schools able to print out the certificates, or does the teacher have to unlock the certificate for an individual child?
No, so they are just downloadable. What we would expect is whoever is delivering those swimming lessons, they would almost do a report or progress on each pupil. You would then have that access to the online portal to say, right, 3 students have achieved their reward 3. So you're going to print off 3, fill out their name and award the children with that certificate. You can basically download and print as many as you need to based on that progress those pupils have made in the lessons. Yeah, Lydia's just said you can write on each certificate, or you can actually type their names in if you wish. Helen is just asking around, will the new rule of 6 apply to local council lessons as ours are 8 at the time?
All right, Lauren, I'll grab this one. At the moment, obviously, we'll wait for Boris's announcement later on today, and we will get further clarification of what that means for our sport. But at this current time, we do not believe that it's going to make a change to swimming, as it is an individual sport. Water polo and everything else we need to seek further clarification on. So please wait and see. But right at this precise moment, we're okay. We will wait.
And as someone else said, in terms of school swimming, schools as it stands are unaffected because of the bubbles and the measures they have in. But again, we will clarify that and provide some guidance as well. Okay, Lauren, I think the only one left that we haven't answered yet was around, are the videos downloadable and accessible, or is it just through the website? I think we've just got you on mute, Lauren, sorry.
Sorry, Alex. How long have I been delivering on Zoom now? I am just typing in the chat box. Can you just explain that question again to me?
Yeah, so the videos that are within this School Swimming and Water Safety Charter, the ones around the national curriculum outcomes, are they downloadable, or are they just within the portal on the website?
I believe they are just within the portal on the website. Katie or Alex, is there a way that they are accessible to be downloaded?
They're on the expected standards videos.
So
have access to those.
Yeah, so the main 3 outcomes, i.e. swim 25 metres of each of the 4 strokes, they are within the expected standards video. So if you pay for the videos as you would for all of them, then you can download them, but everything else would go through the portal. But that's only a selection of them. The rest of them are within the charter. So your best bet is to do them through the charter, through the portal that a little video just took you through a few slides ago.
Lauren, do you want to just pop the expected standards video link in the chat and people go and have a look?
Of course.
You're just quicker at it than me, so that's why I was asking you. By the time
Lauren,
I think about doing it, you've done it.
I'll start this session while this next little bit while Lauren's popping that in, and then we'll go through this next section. Okay, so one of the things I want to talk about today as well was the National Curriculum Training Programme. Now, this is a programme that equips and gives school teachers or people involved in school swimming the necessary knowledge in order to deliver and support school swimming lessons. So we're going to expand upon that a little bit more, and it might be something you're already familiar with. I know we've got a few tutors on the call that get involved in the delivery as well. So that's really good and helpful today. But why do you think this is particularly important now in COVID? Why do we think this is really important training? So one, there is the demand from school teachers. We've seen an increase in schools reaching out, primarily because they know it's access that they can do. They might also have some funding that's rolled over, and they want to support children getting back in that water. So that's one reason. And again, because teachers are within that bubble, we believe that they can therefore go in the water and support learners. So whereas your school teachers as a leisure provider cannot, because you need to keep 2 meters distancing, the school teachers can. So if they're not already confident or competent in school swimming, fantastic teachers back in their classrooms, but maybe school swimming fills them a little bit of dread or a little bit nervous, then actually this is the training for them that can equip them with those necessary skills and knowledge to support on poolside. We also know that it will enhance their delivery. So at a time more than ever when we need to get children back in the water and doing the national curriculum outcomes, this is going to enhance that delivery. It can potentially improve ratios from teacher to learners as more qualified individuals are on staff. And for any schools that independently deliver and don't use a leisure operator, potentially they've got their own pool, then it's fundamental for them to ensure that they have this qualification to equip them with the necessary knowledge and skills to effectively deliver school swimming. Okay, so a very brief overview, and we know your time's precious today and we want to leave lots of time for questions at the end. But a very brief overview, and we'll put more information in the chat box. Dave, I can see you've added some comments on there, so thank you for those. That's really good to hear. Thank you for your support. And Lauren, if you're happy to drop the link for this training as well. But very briefly, there's 2 main training courses you can do that the Institute of Swimming and tutors that are on this call have worked really hard to move online. So the theory elements can now be done online, and then practical, what we can arrange later down the line. But essentially, we've got the support teacher, which is a 6-hour training. It says face-to-face, or obviously in this COVID environment, that'll be online. And then we've got the teacher of school swimming, which enables them to be independent. And that's a little bit longer and goes into more depth and talks about delivery and lesson plans and things like that. So there's theory and practical, which we think is key. And again, that'll be moved on to an online forum for the time being. And that's something that's working really well. So who can attend these courses? So really, it's anyone who's working within a primary and secondary school program. So it doesn't have to be a primary school teacher. There might be a higher learning assistant or somebody who supports the school in another function that's got a passion and wants to be involved in school swimming. And if so, then they're absolutely the right people to be involved. Previous people we've had on the courses, we've had students in full-time education or maybe an apprenticeship scheme, and also people that are in, maybe they're doing their PGC at university, or they're training to become a teacher. And this is a fantastic way for them to gain experience and be involved in school swimming, which again is a national curriculum outcome. So for the sport teacher, once qualified, they will be then equipped to actively assist more qualified teachers and deliver lessons to small groups of similar ability. Again, this could be key for COVID as we're thinking of grouping and bubbles. And then moving forward, you've got the teacher of school swimming who, once qualified, can plan, evaluate and program design lessons to meet the components of the national curriculum. So they won't need direct supervision. So if you're an operator and you have 1 or 2 teachers on poolside, the level 2 Swim England qualified teachers as an example, then these teachers from the school or the school setting can support you. So think how fantastic that lesson could be if there's 3 or 4 qualified individuals on that poolside to deliver a really effective school swimming program. So that's a very brief overview, and the link is there for more information. Again, we're very conscious of your time this afternoon, but it also comes with some fantastic resources. So just to kind of round off on this point, and then we'll move on to the next one, is that there's a training program learner guide, which has got lots of information for parents, for teachers, for delivery, examples of lessons and ratios, and then also the national curriculum activity cards, which has examples of activities, teaching practices, water safety, self-safe rescue elements, flags, all those kind of things. So it's a fantastic resource to help effectively deliver school swimming. Okay, so kind of round off before we go through some FAQs and open the floor up. What we wanted to do is show you a best practice example today. So a little bit of information about one of our partners in the northwest of England, an authority called Active Tameside, who have done a fantastic job in returning to school swimming. Now we're going to go through some information. Now, unfortunately, their team couldn't join us today. So we've kind of done some pre-webinar kind of conversations, and I'll talk you through their feedback. But this is one example of the fantastic work that's happening across the country. And Active Tameside were involved in supporting and developing this guidance, which is why they've supported us today as well. But there's lots of people that are doing some fantastic examples just like this. So the first question we asked them was, well, what does your school swimming look like currently? So they started back swimming on the 7th of September and they teach to over 79 schools. And the number of those schools that are returning each week is growing. And they're really pleased with their progress. And they're seeing week on week more schools returning. So they're actually on their 3rd week of school swimming, which we think is fantastic work. So they've gone straight back into it. And some of those schools have 2 or 3 classes as well. So they're doing a really good job. The majority of the schools have returned. There are some that are absolutely still waiting to get some feedback, but they are returning. They might not be returning until October because they're getting used to some of the COVID requirements, but they are returning. So fantastic news that all those learners are going to start getting back into the pool. One of the things that they said they've done that's worked really well for them, and we'll talk about this some more in a minute, is that they've got a one-way system through the building. So they can do the social bubble within the pool and they're not socially distancing, but there's a one-way system through the building, including a different exit to the public. And they are escorted by a lifeguard or a member of staff so that they are separate from front of house staff, swimming teachers, anyone else in that building. That's working really well for them, especially when they've got turnovers of multiple activities. They've been really flexible with their changing room. So this is a big question. And at the end of kind of the slides, I would love to hear some of your questions. But they've been really flexible with their changing. They've got multiple venues and they've had to have different approaches to suit the changing rooms they've got. One example they shared with me, which was really kind of thinking out the box, is they've got a changing area for schools and cubicles. So they've got the learners to arrive beach ready. And then the first class, say session 1, use the changing rooms. And then when they climb out of the pool, session 2 have come in beach ready. So they're not using the changing room yet. And then when they get out of the pool, they use the cubicles. So throughout the morning, they're alternating the use of the rooms. So they've got ample time to do their hygiene regime and make sure they're ready for the next class. So that was a really good example of how they've been able to pivot across the 2 changing rooms and make their life a little bit easier in terms of cleaning while doing beach ready as well. So that's working really well for them. The other thing they've done, which is really key and kind of stressed this to me on the phone, was that they're doing 30-minute lessons reduced from 40. Now that's to buy them some more time for these extra measures they're having. And that's been really welcomed by the schools. They're understanding of the fact that there are other steps that need to be in place. So what they've instructed, and then you will have 30 minutes in the water. But actually, if you get in through the building quicker and you've got changed and you're beach ready, you might actually get the full 40 minutes, but you'll have a minimum of 30. So that's really great that that's working for them, both the beach ready, and I can see someone's dropped in the comment that that's working well and they're in their 3rd week. And then the other big thing they've done, which I think is really positive, is that they've got lots of communications. So they've communicated to the schools, email, telephone, kind of the normal approach as you would think. They've also offered schools to come and have a walkthrough. So one of the PE leads can come around the building and see the precautions they've had if they're unsure. And they've also provided communications that schools can send to the parents. So what do the parents need to know? Because the schools get all those questions about swimming, and yet the school aren't the swimming experts, it's you guys. So they've also provided communication, letters, information, FAQs for the schools to share with parents. And that's worked really well to alleviate some of those worries that parents might have. I'm a parent, I've got 3 little ones, and I know for me, it's being well informed that's important. If I know what's happening, if my children are swimming or going to nursery, for example, then I'm a lot more comfortable. So that's worked really well for them. Okay, so moving through some of the challenges they face. So it's not been easy. It's been a lot of harder work for them. But some of the challenges they shared was timetabling, the time it took to timetable, and also the logistics of getting everyone in. And in particular, the early morning slot was something they didn't necessarily anticipate. But schools struggled with that because of the COVID precautions they may be having, staggered start times, or bus companies not being available. The early morning slot became a bit of a challenge. So how did they solve this? They had flexible, so different schools and different approaches. They spent a lot of time just working through it and communicating with the schools, which was key. And then they also reduced their class times. So they knew that the class times would be slightly smaller, but it meant they still got all the children swimming, which is key. Again, Katie mentioned it earlier on following the guidance update, but changing rooms, that was a challenge. It was always going to be probably the biggest thing. Once we're in the pool, we're fine. We know that's the easy bit almost. It's the changing rooms and getting through the building. So their solution, they had different approaches at different venues. They implemented Beach Ready, quite strongly enforced that, and that's actually working really well for them. And that's all schools, regardless of their time slot throughout the day. And then they had enhanced cleaning regimes between schools to ensure that schools were comfortable and ready to swim. So again, that's working really well for them now. Another thing I had was customer expectations. So that's both the Learn to Swim school swimming customers, but also other users. There's been a period of time now where they've been able to swim all day long, open lane swim or public swimming sessions. So what they've had to do is have really clear communications and lots of notice that things are starting to change. Things might change on a monthly basis because new products are coming in. So they've had to be really good with their communication and honest about that, and also be consistent. And therefore that's had a really positive impact. Final two challenges, the changes to the building. So I know a lot of partners have had this, but their buildings might have had different entry points or exit points. They might have been repurposed as a health centre or giving out food or something like that. So that's a real challenge for some of their venues. And through careful walkthroughs, video in some of those, one-way systems, entry and exit points that might be not traditional, so it might be an entry point on straight onto poolside via a fire exit, then they've had really success with that. That's kept public and swimming lessons separate. So that's worked really well for them as well. And then the final one that they shared was a challenge with staff training. So what are the expectations on staff? What do they need to know? What are they doing hour by hour and class by class? So the way they solved this, they had regular updates with the staff, good communication, which I think has been a common theme for them, which is great to hear. They allowed their staff to ask questions and experiment a little bit, practice. What does it look like? What's the walkthrough? Let's get some learners through the change room and see what that looks like. And they've also stayed engaged with the national governing body training. So they've attended our trainings like this and also used the guidance to inform their actions. So I think that's been really successful for them. Okay, so I asked, what were some of your successes then? What has really worked and what would you like to share with the webinar today? And the feedback we got was being flexible and changing when needed. So they've had to change a few times throughout, but that's okay. The feedback we got was if they were rigid, they'd have really struggled. So they've used the guidance, but been flexible with it throughout. Communication, we said that was a bit of a theme, but that's been both with the national governing body in terms of guidance and supporting. It's also been with the primary schools itself, but importantly, the parents. They sometimes have the most vocal kind of influence on that school swimming lesson. So it's been important that they get that communication right. One of the successes they had was equipment. So they kind of flagged something that was a challenge for them or their swimming teachers was around, well, how's the equipment going to work in terms of cleaning? How's the equipment going to work in terms of putting their arm discs on, for example? So how are they going to adapt to doing this? Because children normally have support from a teacher. And there's a lot of anticipation and building up and how's it going to work? Where are we going to put the equipment? And it was one of those things that just worked really well. Like the children just adapted to it fantastically, and they just got their arm discs on. They just knew to put their equipment up and knew where to put it at the end of the lesson, and it worked really well. So that's good news. Big part was just starting as well. They thought it worked really ready for them just to start. Yes, they didn't have every school back the first week, but it's growing each week, and just to get started was really powerful for them to learn and to grow within this new environment. And then finally, which I think was the quote of the conversation for me, I said, well, what's been the biggest success? And it was the children. They're back, they're smiling, they're enjoying it. And out of every element within this process they've had to adapt to, they were by far the easiest. They just got it straight away. They understood what they have to do, and they were quite happy to go along with the measures, and they were just excited to be back in the pool. So I think that if that's not the reason to get school swimming back on the agenda, I kind of don't know what is. I think that's fantastic news. Okay, so last point, I'm going to hand back over to Lauren, is a question I asked them to finish off. I said, well, what would you advise? We've got people booked onto our webinar. Lots of people are going to be listening. What would you advise your top tips are to support those people that haven't reopened yet or in those early stages? So these are kind of the 7 things we came up with. First one was get started. Whether it's full or phased, get going. That's almost the hardest bit. There's a lot of anticipation to get started, but have a go, get started, experiment with some different styles. Even if you get one class in, get them swimming, and then you're building confidence from there. Second point was lots of communication. So just be open and honest. I think you'll notice when you go to supermarkets or shops or pubs or whatever it is at the minute, the ones that communicate clearly what you need to do is the easiest. When you walk in and you're clear you're walking a certain way, or you're clear you need to wash your hands at a certain point, it's much better. So good communication. Train your staff. So really important. and make sure the expectations are clear with them and they know exactly what they need to do. That's really important. The national curriculum, so they talked about, it was a really key selling point for them that when they got back into the schools and having those conversations, to highlight to schools, this is a national curriculum subject. It's about when you're returning, not if. And that was actually a really powerful message for them, because it meant some schools have been cautious, might just be returning in 2 weeks or 3 weeks because they're giving themselves some time. But the important thing is they are returning. So national curriculum, that's a powerful message to use. So number 5, the initial message for that first lesson was key. So they said we spent a lot of time for that first lesson making sure everyone knew where they should be walking, that they should be socially distancing from members of staff, what the expectations were in equipment, grouping, all those kind of things. So that first message, really think about that first initial message you give them, and that first lesson, be really clear what you expect, and the lessons will then be more successful moving forward. So number 6, be willing to change and develop. So again, they've had to change a few times to adapt to different changes, schools' requests, things that haven't worked, so be flexible. And then finally, do utilise the guidance. So utilise Swim England's guidance, but don't overcomplicate it. There's loads of information we've given you there, but it's there to support you. You don't need to use the whole document in depth and have massive risk assessments. It can be really simple, and we'd love to support you with that. But use the guidance, but make it as simple as you can to support your school swimming lessons. So I'm going to hand over to Lauren, but that was a very brief overview of what Active Tameside are doing, and I hope you agree. I think they're doing a fantastic job, and that's echoed with lots of partners across the country. If you're in a similar position, we'd love to hear from you as well and see how you're doing. And if you want to get to that point, again, we'd love to hear from you and support you on that journey. So enough from me. Lauren, over to you.
Thanks, Alex. I popped plenty of links in the chat just to make everybody aware, and I will also ensure that the follow-up email includes those links as well, just before we go on to the FAQs. And I just wanted to read out this one. David has just popped in the chat box that Formby Pool rented in containers, converted them into separate changing for all their lessons, and they were placed adjacent to the exit. So there was no crossover with the public, and it seems to be working really well. We would love to hear more of those stories, and I just wanted to touch on, as we go through the FAQs as well, that when we write the guidance, it's not set in stone. It's using it to the best of your ability and applying it to where you can. So there was a lot of questions around beach ready, but it's actually about, is there an opportunity for a school to arrive beach ready? And if there's not, we understand that, but it's just making sure that you use every consideration that you can possible. And just to clarify, because somebody did ask, beach ready just means that they are turning up in their swim kit ready to go, typically with their clothes over the top, so that they can just take that top layer of clothes off and they're already in their swim kit ready to go. But I'm sure we'll probably touch on that through our FAQs as well. Okay, Alex, let's go on to the next slide.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, just to add to that beach ready one, because I know it comes up a little bit, but we're not necessarily recommending that people go home wet. That's kind of a misconception. If there's adequate space, absolutely get them dry and change. That's going to be important in the winter months. It was that they arrive and they can potentially take their clothes off without using the changing rooms because they've got their swimming kit on. So it alleviates the pressure on those smaller confined areas. So that's the goal with the beach ready overall.
Okay, so a big one that came in for us is how would we support for SEND learners? How is this going to work? So actually looking into our guidance, there is a lot more information there, but effectively whatever is happening in the classroom can be replicated in the swimming pool. If there is that one member of staff, maybe two, that is supporting maybe a smaller group of pupils or just a one-on-one pupil, that person can be in the pool supporting them. So just treat the swimming pool environment as that extension of the classroom. Again, there's a lot more information in our guidance, so do have a look at that. When will the guidance be on the Department of Education website? We are hoping that it appears as soon as possible. We don't have a date, Katie or Alex, unless you can update me there on anything I've missed. But we're also just waiting for it to go live.
Yeah, it won't be, it will just be a link through. So if you ever get lost in the government website, there will be a random link that will take you through to ours eventually. So it might already be there. I just haven't happened to click on the page where it's been hidden just yet.
Thanks, Katie. So what effect does this have on changing rooms? And I know Alex touched on this earlier, but this does work differently for schools to how other sessions may run. Now, what you have to bear in mind is that however the operator has set up their access in and out of changing rooms is their decision, and they have to come to an agreement with you as the school in how you're going to get the pupils in and out of those changing rooms. Beach style ready is really popular, but as we just mentioned, it may not suit all schools, and we understand there has to be some flexibility there and maybe thinking outside the box. But yeah, don't overthink the changing rooms too much. Again, it's that extension of the classroom with the schools specifically. Okay, Alex, let's go on to a couple more FAQs. I think I've said beach style already so many times. It is applicable for schools. It is that communication and that prior agreement between that lesson provider and those schools on how this is going to work. Whether it's a walkthrough, whether it's a videoed walkthrough that actually the pupils watch and agree to before attending their swimming lessons. There's been lots of ideas that we've kind of had being used or trialed. So yeah, definitely go with beach ready if you can. So another big question for us, what impact has this had on transport and its potential costs? Obviously, transport doesn't fall with us, but we want to be able to support schools as much as possible and get as many pupils returning to the pool as possible. So if you do go to our school swimming section guidance, there is a specific link that will take you to the government website where they talk more around the transport here and what is available or to support you with transport. And again, what impact does the rule of 6 have on swimming? As Katie mentioned, we are just waiting for further update. And then we can, Katie, can we include that in the post-comms information?
Yeah, if anyone's been watching me on video, I've been frantically typing away, so there will be a communication later on today that will come from the comms team. So depending on when we send our comms out, we may include it, we may not.
Fab, thank you, Katie. Where can I find the National Curriculum Activity Cards? Question has just popped into the chat box. So they are a physical resource with the charter. So once you sign up to the charter, they will be posted out to you as a physical resource. Any other questions popped through? Alex, can you just go on to the next slide for me? Just make sure. Okay, so we've had a question around, do we recommend teachers using masks? Our stance is that as soon as PPE is wet or in the environment that they're being used, they are ineffective. So we have not recommended that teachers are to wear masks. I know personally, if I was to stand on poolside and try and deliver a swimming lesson with a mask, it would be extremely uncomfortable, and there are lots of other ways that you can be maintaining that social distancing without a mask. Katie, Alex, have you got anything to add to that on PPE?
We've seen a variety of different providers using different types of PPE when they're delivering. So some providers have visors, some have said masks. It's not something that Swim England are recommending. As Lauren said, there are ways in which you can deliver, still maintaining social distancing of at least more than 2 meters in most instances. The thing is with visors, Again, remember that it is airborne, so obviously with the visor on, you also need a mask as well. And I've seen some great pictures of these teachers wearing visors in the water, manhandling children and leaning over them. And obviously they've got no protection at all then at that point. So it is very much down to the provider and what you are comfortable with, but it's not something that Swim England are mandating.
Thanks, Katie. Okay, I am going to take you through just a few slides around the supporting resources and what else is available, and then we will open the floor for some Q&A. So we have all 6 sections of the returning to pool guidance. We do have pool layouts and pool lesson plans available for you to download as well. These are all COVID specific, so things that you can take and apply to school swimming, but please bear in mind the amount of resources you would get readily available to download, specifically through signing up for the charter. We also have downloads in terms of COVID signage, so washing your hands, bringing your own water bottle, and lots of other social media downloads that you can use to encourage preventing the transmission of COVID. So do go and take a look. They're more of our generic returning to the pool guidance resources. Okay, Alex, can we go on to the next slide? So we have hosted so many webinars and we have recorded as many as possible, and they are available on our website. I will pop the link in here as well. But we just wanted to bring to your attention a couple that are coming up specific around school swimming. So we have how your swim school can benefit from an effective awards scheme and effective delivery of games in a COVID-19 environment. So again, through the same booking link you would have found this one, you can book onto the next 2 coming up. Okay, so can you all, there are 80 of you on today's webinar, I would like you to tell me in the chat box one thing that you will take back to your place of work that you can implement in your school swimming lesson delivery or organisation or communication. Just one thing. There's 80 of you, so I want 80 answers. Yeah, fire away and I'll stop talking for a second. Parent letters. Yes, Dawn. Beach ready. Fun. Oh, yes, absolutely. Confidence. Parent FAQ. Sign up for the charter. Oh, I'm loving all of these. Parent FAQ. Training. Dry run. Yes, Ben, that is a great shout. Definitely get that dry run in there. First lesson, safety, but also a fun focus. Absolutely. Walkthroughs. Plenty of communication. Keep them coming, guys. There are 80 of you on here. I want 80 answers today. Beach ready. More emphasis on self-rescue. Water safety. The pool is a classroom. We are a school pool with only our students using the pool. Oh, that sounds like a dream. I like that. Beth, if you need any support with the charter, drop us an email. You've got a little bit more freedom there having your own pool. I'm loving all of these. Can't wait to use the new SEND Foundation Awards. Absolutely, Lydia. Let us know how you find them. Do stay in touch. Leslie said charter subscription. Again, Leslie, if you get stuck, if you need any support with signing up for the charter, let us know. Rob said one way in and one way out, one set of kids in change rooms without a delay to lessons. Sounds like you've got that one sus there, Rob. Helen, try our best to get kids back into the water. Absolutely, Helen. Whether it's a full approach of everybody getting back in or a phased approach, let's get that ball rolling. Absolutely. So as they're coming in, those extra suggestions, I just had a comment on the certificates being downloaded that I did want to add on before we finish today. In terms of typing onto the certificates that were discussed earlier, you have to make sure that it's through an Adobe Reader. Otherwise, you can just print them directly and then handwrite the children's names on. But if you want to type them on, it has to be done through an Adobe Reader. And to access, you need to go through Chrome, not Outlook. Have I got that all right, Mandy? Because Mandy Mason gave me the heads up on that one.
Yeah, some of the challenges that we found in the early days was that schools couldn't access all of the resources if they used Outlook, but if they changed to Google Chrome, it was fine. And sometimes with the certificates, it's not so easy to type unless you've got Adobe Reader. Just passing that on as something that we found when we were doing it.
Perfect. No, thank you so much, Mandy. And that's why we really want to ensure that everybody is accessing the resources that are there. So if your school is signed up to the charter, if your lesson provider is signed up to the charter and somebody is struggling to access, please do contact us. We are more than happy to jump on a Zoom call and make sure everybody is accessing everything that is available. Oh, Mandy, you just had a shout out on the chat box from a lovely Penny John Pierce.
Hey, Penny, how you doing? Lovely to hear from you. One of my favourite people.
Ah. And yeah, any questions, just pop them in the chat box now. If you would like to get in contact with us, there is our email address. So it's schoolsswimming@swimming.org. I always put a double S in the middle. Apologies for any typo there. And obviously you can access all the charter information through the links I popped in the chat box.